Welcome, Ron, to this week's edition of Figuring It Out. I'm Matt Wilson. You're Ron Schlecht.
I am so
And
far.
so far, I don't know if that'll change. Maybe in 2021, um,
No, it's not. I will still be
we
Ron.
identify.
Yeah.
This week, we chose to target the CISA ransomware guide. It's something that I think a lot of folks have heard about, but I don't know if they've actually taken a read through. And I don't think what we're going to do here is like a technical analysis and like a readout of what it is. I don't think I guess we're well suited for that, but I don't think that's a way to make this fun.
Yeah.
But I think the broader topic is ransomware. And everyone has either been impacted by ransomware or knows someone that's been impacted by ransomware.
Yeah.
And I think the change we've seen in the last, I'll call it 12 to 18 months ish, is leadership in a lot of our clients is not just saying, "Hey, are we good?" and then getting the yeah, we're good, and then moving on. They're saying, "Are we good? You need to prove to me you're good."
Yeah.
And I see the ransomware guide as not like the way you'll prove it out, but for those that are wondering how they're doing, that want to take a temperature and want to get some real practical things, I do think it's a good doc. So I'll pull it up while I pause and let you actually get a word in.
Yeah. What I like about it, and I kind of said this before when I looked at it, was if it was a vendor document, if it was any sort of vendor document, say that like BTB security put out or another assessment firm or like even a software firm, I would probably look at it and say like, well, it's a marketing piece. It's
Yeah.
decent, but it's all kind of fluffy because a lot of this stuff has been said. But what I think is good about it is that it is fairly prescriptive, but I think
Yeah.
it balances out and it doesn't lock people down into, very, very specific things. It reiterates a lot of what we've already heard that should be done in terms of ransomware. So I think it's a great guide because it's, like I said, prescriptive enough and it balances out, allowing the implementation method to be done the way that it can fit within any organization. But I think the topic is worth reiterating because we're still being attacked, right? We still see a number of people that fall for this through the various methods of infection, and it's impactful, right? It continues to be something that's a big concern this year.
Yeah, and CISA is someone who, we're going to keep politics out of this, but let's just say they rose to prominence probably unintentionally in November of 2020. So if that name is, or that abbreviation is kind of familiar, but it's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, I believe, right? Yeah, agency. Okay, I wanted to make sure it was 99% sure, but didn't want to misspeak. Oh, yeah, and it's there 5 times in the doc right in front of me. So I pulled up the doc and we'll link it in our YouTube in the comments or in the overview section. But, it's 16 pages. And I think what jumps out at me is it's, as a guy that's read documents like the HIPAA security rule that are hundreds of pages or NIST 853 that's hundreds of pages, this is pretty small, but it's really dense. And I think that's going to turn people off. It's broken into 2 parts. There's a best practices, part 1, and there's the response checklist, a ransomware response checklist. So, when you take a look at this part 1, I want to stress that my gut and my recommendation is everyone can get something out of this. And everyone should read through all of it. Don't just stop at part 1, get to part 2, because that response, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying if you do all this stuff in part 1 that you're immune to ransomware, but you're going to put yourself in a good spot.
You're going to put yourself in a good spot, and it's a good starting point if you want to develop something a little bit deeper. And I mean, we've seen these assessments take on a life of their own where people start, it's kind of like anything, right? The first time you do an assessment or kind of testing on how susceptible you are to some type of attack like this, you can cover the bases in that response and actually get out of it, what some of your defenses should be, and even set up kind of tabletops to go through exactly what you should be doing. But it can be used as a base for furthering or going deeper for your preparations or a checklist, or even doing your own tabletop exercise in a ransomware.
Yeah, I think Ron, you had said beforehand, there's not a lot of new in here, and no, right? Like, look at this term. This just jumped out at me now. But gold images. What are we using? Norton Ghost to re-image
The old images, man.
some oh geez, why can't I think of it? Some IBM ThinkPads, right? Like some ThinkPad. What is it? T42 or T40s, something like that.
T42 is the bomb. Yeah, but it's stuff like this. It's when you go through this, and the next part is all about like scanning, patching, and then
Yeah.
hardening, and going through that type of stuff. And it's not, this is the stuff that we say time and time again. And for somebody who's done penetration testing, going back 20 years, right? It was scanning, patching, hardening. And guess what? To this day, there's still major issues because people aren't regularly patching, updating their software, hardening, ensuring that things are configured appropriately. I think it's better based off of the tools that are out there, but this is still where a lot of people trip up. And this is one of the best ways that ransomware continues to just proliferate in an organization, right? It just goes randomly because people still don't do these things, right? We're also fascinated with all the fancy security tools when in reality, it's a lot of these basics that still need to be done for even these advanced things or these advanced techniques.
Yeah, like strategic, patch your stuff, harden your stuff. Tactical, specifically block these ports at your firewall or at your border, right? I mean, that's what I like that this guide brings together. And I think, again, reinforce what you said a few moments ago is this is all the fundamentals of InfoSec. These are things that should not be new. And if they're new to you, hey, not trying to make you feel bad or guilty. If they're new to you, cool.
Yeah.
Apply them, right? Like take our word for it. The thing that we've been saying for years and years and years, that the blocking and tackling, the fundamentals are what's gonna win the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll scroll down to the response checklist side. I mean, it covers things like phishing. And again, I'm not asking anyone to scroll along here and try to.
Well, I think it's nice that they go through the different or the common vectors. You see, um, previous malware infection, phishing, things like that, or third-party managed service providers, things like that, because those are the things, like I said, that should tip people off if they want to do a tabletop exercise to take into consideration, and to set up and start to think about those types of protections. Because it's not just about, it's like anything, right? It's like any sort of malware outbreak, right? It's not just about that specific thing, but it's also, well, how did it get there? How did it start? And kind of going back to the root cause analysis of the security problem.
Yeah, I think you mentioned tabletops. I mean, I'm pretty confident I haven't been in on 100% of the tabletops we've done over the last, again, I'll call it year or so. But I'm pretty confident just about all of them have ransomware involved. And that's something that's, it's not the only thing. So that's another pro tip. If your tabletop is only ransomware, I'm not going to say you're doing it wrong. That's a bit dramatic, but maybe up it a little bit, right? Add in some other things that are going to force your organizations to stretch in some ways that you haven't before. Make sure you're involving, and we've done, not to go on a total aside, we've done things on tabletops in the past, but make sure you're getting other business units involved and, folks like PR and marketing and your leadership team. So anyway, I don't want to go too far down that path, but if you're only doing ransomware as part of your tabletop, we should talk. Give us a ring.
Yeah.
We'll do more. So yeah, and they also have some, general practice guidelines, all good stuff, all things we would recommend. And all things, by the way, that aren't going to be as easy and obvious. And I'm just picking this one because it's right here, but like remove unnecessary accounts and groups. Well, that assumes you have some ability to know what is necessary. And in some organizations, you might not have that, right?
Yeah.
So that's
that in and of itself is one thing that I think it's great because it's a nice prescriptive thing that's in here, but at the same time could be another gigantic project, just depending upon the organization size and buy-in that you have to really make your organization more secure. So even just like that minor thing shows how this could snowball into some major projects.
Oh yeah, and look, here's another tricky one that sounds so easy. Leverage best practices for O365 or Microsoft 365. Yeah, that's a whole other set of stuff you need to be doing. That's its own checklist.
Yeah.
So, I'm not trying to dissuade anyone. I'm trying to encourage you to at least take something out of this, right? If you
I
knock
think,
off one thing a week,
yeah, but I think this goes back to a lot of what we talk about when we try to give guidance to clients, and sort of my view on the world is that when things come up, new guidance like this comes out, it's kind of like regulatory or industry based standards. A lot of it is already based on things that are currently being done or that have been told to you to do previously.
yep.
So, things like leverage best practices, essentially you're securing Microsoft Office 365. If you have Microsoft Office 365 or you've had it in your organization for years, you've probably already gone through some of the best practices. So again, you have to think a little bit more holistically. So when somebody on the board says, "Hey, how can we protect ourselves against ransomware?" It's not just, well, let me jump and try to figure out and buy a tool specifically around preventing ransomware in my environment, but this is how all of this different stuff ties in. And this is why we talk about folks having control frameworks or prescribed control frameworks, or they're following a particular industry-based standard or regulation framework, whatever it may be, because there's so many of these different things that slot in that hit on different areas. And this is, I mean, that's a great example of it.
Yeah, everyone wants to hit the easy button on everything. I get it.
Yeah.
We get it. But there isn't, right? I don't care. And I'm not going to name any vendors because we're not here to, there's plenty of good solutions out there. This isn't a not,
Security solved.
yeah. Yeah. Just don't fall into the trap of I buy this thing and then I'm good. Because as you could see, if you take a read and now we can point at, this isn't just BTB security saying, this is BTB security, CISA, and probably many other good InfoSec folks would get behind a lot of this. So as we wind down, I'll just scroll down again, not expecting anyone to read along, but I want to jump down to this part 2, the response checklist, just to make sure that we call it out and let people see it a little bit. Take a look at this, run your team through it, and have an honest conversation with yourself about how much of this you could do. Because this first one, Ron, determine which systems were impacted and isolate.
Yeah.
How many companies can do that? How many companies can kind of immediately, once ransomware is detected, can you go figure out, even if you only have 20 employees, without going workstation to workstation, which now you can't do because COVID, we're all home. How are you going to figure that out? Right? You got.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big one when we do those ransomware assessments and we talk about them. I think it's important to demonstrate, and this is why you need somebody with some expertise in demonstrating, a specific piece of malware. This is what it does, and this is the likely path that it would take, or these are the changes that it makes, and this is how it would move in your environment. If you don't have the appropriate monitoring in place, or if you haven't done that modeling on your own, this is going to be something that you're going to have a really tough time on. How were you impacted?
Yeah. So again, I think the message that we wanted to get out in our figuring it out is that, folks, the CISA ransomware guide is a solid doc. Take a look. It's fairly comprehensive. I'll stop sharing it so we can go on.
It's a guide. It is a good guide, and it's not a marketing. It's not a vendor marketing piece that you should print out, and wipe your butt with. But like, it's actually something that's useful from an organization that I think it's beneficial that they're reiterating that and they've put it into one guide. I think it's something that more people should take a look at.
Yeah, get it. Take a look. I think that's our message. Well, thank you, Ron. I appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions on it, you want to hit us up, there's a million ways to contact us. We're all over the socials. It's easy to reach out at btbsecurity.com. So,
all right. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Ron. Have a good day.
Yep, you too.